Okay, and we are live. How's it going? Mets, Phillies, or whoever you're a fan of. Thank you guys all so much for chiming in for the latest podcast episode of Queen's Corner. Myself is WardyNYM. That is former Met Anthony Recker, and we have a lot to get into in Mets land. I feel like every show that we've been doing as of late has been a lot of the same, but has continued to get worse. And now we're at a point where I felt inclined, and I hate that I'm even saying this, but I felt so inclined to make sure that I titled the podcast that the 2023 Mets are unofficially dead. Now, they're not completely dead. They're not officially out of it. But as they currently stand right now, they're 8.5 games out of the wild card spot. They're 7 games below 500. They have yet to win a series in the month of June. The last series that they won was May 31st against these same Philadelphia Phillies. The Mets had a 6-3 lead in quite literally the 8th inning today, and they lost by a final score of 7-6. You saw the defensive miscues once again, this time from the rookie and Brett Beatty. You saw the bullpen management, or lack thereof, from Buck Showalter. There's so many things, anything and everything that could have possibly went wrong, once again went wrong as the Mets dropped 2 out of 3 games against the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, I know Rec has a lot to say on this, and I know I have a lot to say on this, but before I do, I just want to give a big shout out to everyone first chiming in live or on replay. If you're on the WardyNYM YouTube channel, make sure to, again, vent. This is a therapy session. This is a safe space. We have a lot to say. I want to hear how you guys are doing in the live chat. For people watching on the 7 Line socials, that being their Facebook or their Twitter, thank you so much for chiming in for that as well. Shout out to the 7 Line. They had a phenomenal outing, and the Mets won and only one in this series, which was yesterday against those Phillies. 1,500 strong Mets fans with their blue shirts on. And again, the Mets got the win. A nice, comfortable win. Max Scherzer had a very strong start for them, and they got just enough offense that they needed. And the Mets, again, against Zach Wheeler today, did really well. Another day where the Mets score at least 6 runs, and another day where the Mets lose the ball game. So, Rec, I have so many things I want to ask in regards to you and how you're feeling. But before I do that, I really just need to do my own little Rec rant, the same way that you did yours last show. Because not only with the Mets, but for me personally, as many of you people know out there, because I'm very open about what's going on with me in my life, this past month has been anything easy for me, just on a personal level, right? And when the main thing that is part of my focal point in my young life is covering a Metropolitan ball club that has now been 6-15 in the month of June, 6.5 back of the closest playoff spot. And I have the privilege of covering them for a living. But it's times that like this where I don't only have the Mets, but life going on as is, where I am truly disgusted and embarrassed on having to talk about them as often as I do. They have been so unbearable that the average fan at least has the luxury of knowing, you know what, I'm going to sit back. I got to take a week off from watching this team because they're just not good for me. I'm too emotionally attached. And for me, that was the case prior to covering this club. But I can't do that now, right? I take pride in what I do, and I certainly take pride in being a fan of this Metropolitan Ball Club. But the fact that they have got me to the brink of quite literally being so fed up with them this season and truly believing that there is little to no chance of any hope this year, you know things are going bad. Because, Rec, I know that you and I have only known each other for a year, but I've been so optimistic time and time again. I feel like you've seen the worst out of me in my fandom just over the past couple months. I mean, in texts and stuff like that. Like I'm writing the Mets off before the game is done, and more often than not, I've been right, and that's what I hate the most. I hate feeling like I'm a Frank Fleming of the world right now because I'm actually acting rationally, at least when the Mets are not performing well. I'm not the guy to, being like, oh, the Mets won, but this and this and this, they're still, a dumpster fire when they had 100 wins last year. I'm not that kind of fan. However, I am a rational fan, and when I know that things are terrible, I'm going to call it out. And Rec, right now, correct me if I'm wrong, things are pretty terrible. So I want to know how you're feeling. The Mets got, PH'd. I put PH for part of my French, fucked in Philly. That's the first topic of discussion here. I want to know how you're feeling after the Mets dropped 2-3. Just let it rip.
Not surprised. Let's be honest. Before we went into the series, I think you and I both said they'd probably lose 2 out of 3. I think Joe was the only one who said they might win 2 out of 3.
He was the only internal optimist, yeah.
My gut was they would lose the first game and the third game. I'm not here to say, oh, look at me, I was right. I think when you look at what this team is doing right now, the concerning part is I don't know how much accountability is going around. I don't know, and we don't know. We're not in the clubhouse, right? You hear whispers, you talk to guys, you hear things, whatever it is. We don't know exactly what's going wrong. I try to stay optimistic. I try to stay positive in a sense that if I was in that clubhouse, I wouldn't feel like my season was over. I wouldn't feel like my team's season is over, right? Like that's how this works. It's not just done. We have a shot still. That said, this team, I think more than any other that I've covered so far, and I've been covering the Mets since 2020, has been the most frustrating just because I think for the first time, I didn't have the highest expectations for this team. I didn't think they were a World Series team still, but I didn't think they were not a playoff team. And I think this is the first time that I've thought they were at least a playoff team, and they're not even playing close to that. It's really hard to see. It's really frustrating to see. What that is exactly, I don't know that I can put my finger on it. I can tell you this, that what I'm seeing on the field is not a coaching problem. Are there maybe some coaching mistakes? Are there maybe some lineup things I would do differently? Certainly. Relievers I would handle differently. Absolutely. And I'm not getting into specifics. I can't say that word. But it's not clicking. And to me, the players are not doing nearly good enough of a job. The walks, the hit by pitches, the errors, which have been comical of late over the last couple of weeks. The last couple of weeks, everyone's been at it. I don't know. I have nothing to put my finger on. The pitching's been bad. Offense, it's not terrible, but it's not good enough. And that makes it a problem because the pitching's been terrible. But then the errors, the lack of focus, the mental mistakes, that's an issue. And that's where it really comes down to, is this team ready to play every day? And that's not I know people think that's the manager's job. I know that people think that. As a player, you take it on yourself to prepare yourself every single day. Every day. I get myself ready mentally and physically. When I'm not playing, because I was a bench player, I was a role player, I had to be more sharp than the guys who were out there playing every day. Because when I got my shot, I had to be ready. And when I was on the bench, I still had to be focused and ready, even though I was dealing with the frustration and heartache of feeling like my career was passing me by, but I still had to be ready to play. And I'm not saying, oh, woe is me. I'm just saying these players have to take ownership of it, whether it's the starters or the guys on the bench. You have got to be ready to play every pitch, every out, every swing, everything of every game, even if you're not in that lineup. And that's it. It's the hardest thing in baseball to do, but that's why these guys are professionals, and that's why they're in the big leagues. And that's one of the problems I see right now with this team, is they're just not.
See, and one thing that I certainly appreciate most about your input as a former player is when we get into that managerial discussion, because from a fan point of view, we always turn to the coaching staff first, especially if you have what the Mets on paper do offensively, talent-wise is there. And I would also like to start by saying that offensively, the Mets, over the past month plus, that has been their least concern. The concern, as you know and as we've noted, is that when scoring 6 or more runs this season, the Mets are 13-12. According, again, shout out to Meek on the We Gotta Bleed podcast, because he tweeted this out earlier and he's accurate. The league average when scoring 6+ runs is a 820 win percentage. The Mets are at 520. If the Mets had a league average record when they score 6+, it would be 20-5. That would make the Mets 42-35 instead of 35-42. Let's not get twisted. We all know this pitching has been and will continue to be the complete demise of this ball club. Now, this is where we get into some really...
Defense goes into that, though, because
yes,
it's run
right.
prevention,
right,
not just pitching. And today what we saw was a young player make a physical mistake, right? Beatty fielded that ball coming over to his left and couldn't get it out of his glove for whatever reason. Physical mistake. Not a mental mistake, physical mistake. Those happen, especially to young players, especially to a guy who's been said to not be like totally polished at third base. He's been fairly good over there, but he's not totally polished at third base. It's going to happen. You need guys in the bullpen who in those situations are going to come through for you, who are going to stand up and say, I got you. Don't worry about it. I got you. Instead of completely unraveling. And the problem with this Mets team right now is they don't have those guys in the bullpen outside of one guy. And one guy can't save you.
Right. And that's where things got really amplified, because we're going to get into more on Buck, how I'm currently feeling about him, and I want to know more on yours here shortly, because we have these kind of divvied up in segments. However, one thing that stood out to everyone was after that Brett Beatty error, again, as everyone watched today, Mets had a 6-3 lead in the 8th inning. You had Josh Walker on the bump, wasn't able to even get one out. Allowed a single, allowed a couple walks, and he was out of there. Jet Brigham came in. Of course, Brett Beatty, again, botched what should have been an easy double play ball, could have completely changed the direction of that inning, and the Mets probably likely win this ball game, or have such a greater chance of doing so by only having to worry about that one final out then. They don't. A run comes in, it's 6-4. Jet Brigham goes on to, again, walks or hit by pitch galore, simple as that. He drove in 2 runs from hit by pitches. Jet Brigham, who has actually been one of the few bright spots in this Mets bullpen, all things considered, hasn't been anything flashy, hasn't been anything overly great, but the bar has been so low on the depth of this bullpen that having Brigham give you some consistent outs has been needed. I mean, Grant Hartwig went 2 scoreless innings for the Mets today. I mean, they were getting pitching production after Carlos Carrasco, again, for the 3rd straight start. He should not be in this rotation. I will continue to say that. Could only go 4 innings today to earn run ball.
Who should be?
No, I know. I know. That's
okay. All right. As long as we're on the agreement there,
yes.
There's no
better
answer.
options. We're pitching David Pearson Tuesday. Like, that's where we're at. When the guy is still, I'm sure, to an extent, mentally shot. Joey Lucchesi has been pitching so well in AAA, but they decided not to opt for him because he would probably be on short rest because he just pitched, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, the pitching in itself is a complete shit show. We know that they don't have the quality depth. They don't have the right things to turn to. Yes, you have reinforcements coming soon in July, and the Jose Quintanas, who pitched his 3rd rehab outing in Brooklyn today. Then you have the deeper bullpen guys that can eat you multiple innings, and Sean Reed Foley, who's looking really good on his fastball and is getting really good looks coming back from his Tommy John. Steven Ridings is now pitching in AAA and is touching the high 90s on the velo. So there are reinforcements that the Mets will have to consider coming fairly soon, but the damage is already done here. We're not at a point where, you had people, for example, talking about, when the Phillies were down 7 games below 500, that's when they parted with Joe Girardi. While that's understandable, that was also in May last year and not basically at the end of June. The Mets are in such a tough spot right now with how deep the wild card is, with how well the NL Central is playing, the way that no one expected, thanks to the Reds, thanks to the Pirates to a certain extent, and all these other teams, that the Marlins, for example, too, they're killing it. It's just the depth is unbelievable. And now the Mets, with a $360+ million payroll, find themselves in the same situation as another team that's spent huge in the San Diego Padres. The Padres, too, are 4 games below 500. Not as bad as 7 games, but at least 4 games below 500 or 7 games back of the wild card. Right? So we know that money doesn't guarantee or equal success. But having said that, from heading into the season with the expectations, the talent that we know is still here, it's inexcusable what we're seeing. And this is where I certainly start to have gripes on the managerial front, because I truly felt like, to an extent, and I know you probably will disagree with me here, Rack, is David Robertson was available. And I know I'm going to hear what you're about to say. He was meant for the 9th. But Buck has been stuck in this mindset where he's so worried about being ahead for what's going to happen later or even the following day, that is still continuing to be the demise of a ball club, when you can clearly see that they just don't have the pitching depth. We shouldn't have to roll out Robertson every day. Ottavino not getting the job done yesterday, and then Robertson having to come in early, that was a shit show. That shouldn't happen. That's how desperate they are, though, to get consistency, because they have none if you're not named D-Rob. But when you have him, and aside from yesterday, Robertson hasn't pitched much at all lately, you could still make that fair argument. And then he decides that Buck's like, okay, we're going to warm him up now after we're losing 7-6. So I want to ask you, what is your opinion on that front? How much blame, if at all, should Buck have in that situation? Because from what we've seen, at least from internally, so many people that I know evaluate this Mets team on a day-to-day and try to put their emotions aside that really give a overall strong analysis and a balanced outlook, sometimes that I can't do because I let my fandom get the best of me. Even all of them are in complete unison that they're kind of jaw-dropped with Buck at this point. So I want to know what your opinion is on this.
I'm just going to comment on what I've seen in the last 2 days.
Sure.
First, Ottavino screwed the Mets yesterday.
Yep.
Him coming in with 2 outs in the 7th, right? Got the first out, comes back out in the 8th, ends up taking 26 pitches, getting 2 outs total, just one more in the 8th yesterday. And having Robertson have to come in that situation meant, and I texted you guys this last night, meant that there was a good shot one or both of them may not even be active today. The fact that this was before Robertson got the double play ball to end the 8th quickly, which is great. But that up down as a reliever counts as extra, even though he only threw, I think, 13 pitches yesterday total after getting the 3 outs in the 9th, which is incredible. The fact that he was able to do that, he allowed a base runner in the 9th, got another double play ball. It was huge. It was incredible what he was able to do. Again, David Robertson being a beast for this team in making up for Adam Ottavino and his shortcomings. That is what cost this team today. Because when you get to the 7th batter in the 8th inning in Alec Bohm, and you go to make a pitching change from Brigham, and you decide to bring in, from Walker, and you decide to bring in Brigham instead of Robertson, that's because you only have 1 inning with Robertson. And you're looking at 7, 8, 9 in the Phillies order. Not 1, 2, 3. You're looking at 7, 8, 9. So Buck's idea is, okay, I'll have Robertson ready for the top of the order in the 9th inning because that's the best part of their order. Yes, he could have squashed it in the 8th, and maybe Robertson comes in and gets the outs. But guess what? Robertson's not going back out there for the 9th. He had 1 inning. He had one, even if it was 1 out or 2 outs, he wasn't going up down again. They weren't going to allow that. That's not going to be allowed in today's game to go back-to-back days as a reliever with up downs, meaning no matter how many outs, no matter how many pitches, having to throw, then sit down, then throw again. That's what's hardest on your arm. And so having that problem with Robertson meant he could only go for 1 inning. Even if it wasn't 3 outs, it was just a part of 1 inning or 1 full inning. He wanted to see if he could maneuver it so that he would have a full inning and he would be able to close out the 9th. I don't put that on Buck. I put that on Ottavino from yesterday and Brigham and Walker today not getting the job done. Now, Brigham and Walker, it's not really fair of me to just crush those guys. They're not Walker. I mean, the kid just came up. Brigham, he's been in the big leagues, but he's not a high leverage guy. He never was. He hasn't been. And I'm not saying he can't be, but he's not right now. He certainly is not. And so to me, those guys are in tough positions. Buck is in a tough position. Robertson's in a tough position, all because Ottavino didn't do his job yesterday. Now, a lot of that stems to the fact that Diaz isn't here, that they thought they'd have more depth. In the rotation, which would allow McGill and Peterson to show up and be starters / relievers, which allowed that there are so many reasons you could talk about why there's no depth on this team right now. Underperformance, injury, and that's it. Underperformance and injury. A lot of it has to do with underperformance. The only real injury is Diaz. There were some injuries to AAA with ridings. You mentioned the guys, and I get that, and that's tough to deal with. But this team just has not performed to the level that they're expected to perform at. And to me, that's not all on the coaching staff. Can you say they could have helped him in some way or another, a little bit better here and there? Sure. I don't know. We don't know. We don't know that. There's no way you can, certifiably say it's Jeremy Hefner's fault, it's Buck's fault, it's anybody's fault. But what I can say is these guys are not performing. And as professional athletes, It's our job to go out there and perform. And if we don't, we should look at ourselves and it should be our fault. The one thing I will say about Buck, this is the only critical thing I'm going to say about Buck. I've noticed this lately. There have been errors and mistakes that are inexcusable, that are not difficult plays. Now, I commend him for not throwing his players under the bus.
Yeah,
I
that's
do.
the last thing
I
he'll
do
do.
because I've had managers say things to the press that I just blew my mind. Like, whoa, really? You're going to go there? At the same time, what I hear Buck saying when pop-ups are falling in between your outfielders and your infielders that need to be caught 100% of the time, when I hear him saying those are difficult plays, I'm hearing excuses. I'm hearing a lack of accountability. You can say as a manager, yes, we need to make that play. Yes, there needs to be better communication. And then right after that, you can say, and those guys know that. Francisco Lindor knows that. Tommy Pham knows that. Brandon Nimmo knows that. And I'm going right to Friday night and those pop-ups. There's been more than that. It's been going on for weeks, like I said. You can say those things. That's okay. It's okay to say, he made a mistake. He knows it. He's going to work to fix it. We're going to help him do that. That's fine. Saying it was a difficult play, no, it wasn't a difficult play. Neither of those were difficult plays. I don't care what the wind's doing. It's a big league game. You are big leaguers. You can catch the ball when it's in the air for 5 seconds. You can do that. And so that is the problem. So I'm honestly not throwing those guys under the bus either. I'm saying they need to focus better and work better. And they know that. I think 100% they would come on this show and say that. I don't think there's an ounce of them that would say, yeah, that was just really hard. I don't think I could have done anything different. None of them would say that. So for Buck to be up there saying those things, I think allows those mistakes, even if he's doing something else behind closed doors, it allows those mistakes. And I doubt that he is. I don't know. It doesn't look like it, but we don't know that. It allows those mistakes to go without it, or it feels like it allows those mistakes to go without the attention of, yeah, we need to work on that because that can't happen. It's okay to have that. It's great to have that accountability, even from a player standpoint, for my manager to say that. I can remember there was a time in Miami, I may have brought this up before, Brandon Lyon, 9th inning, throws a curveball, gets between my legs, we lose the game. Like, that ball cost us the game. After the game, the camera's on me in my locker. Rec, what happened on that? I missed it. I can't miss that. That's terrible. Shouldn't happen. Flat out what I said. If Terry Collins would have gone out and said that, if he would have said, Rec can't miss that ball, he knows he can't miss that ball, I would have said, you're right, Terry. My bad. If he would have said, yeah, Rec's terrible, I can't believe he missed that. That's dog crap. He's going to AAA. Yeah, then I'd have a different feeling about it.
Right.
But he didn't. He didn't say anything. He didn't even get asked because they asked me and I just said it. When it gets to Buck and he has that chance to answer that question, he's got to take some accountability for his team and not point fingers, but just say, yes, they need to be better. They know that. And we should be better in preparing them. We need to get better in preparing them. They need to be better, but we need to do a better job of preparing them and making sure they're going to make those plays. That's how you take accountability as a manager. That's how you take accountability as a player. That's how it passes on from top to bottom. And that's what I'm not seeing right now. So that's the one thing I will say that I'm not seeing from Buck right now. And I just need that to change. And when that changes, I think some of the mentality in the clubhouse could change. I don't know. But with these young guys that are impressionable, you can't mess this up right now. You can't. And I don't know. That's the problem with it. I need that accountability, and I need these kids to see what it looks like.
So I got a lot that I want to dissect from what you just said, but I also want to say that I appreciate you, Rec, because again, you're not going to find that type of perspective just from any Joe Schmo out there. That's why not only you, but with your experience, of course, being a former player, but still, being an analyst, what you are today, like that helps so much. So I hope that everyone really got a chance to digest everything that Rec broke down there, because he was able to not only share his personal point of view as a former player, like examples, but also knowing what it's like in other players' mindset is key, right? They're professionals at the end of the day. They know if they F up, that they F up. Like, they don't need really anyone to necessarily say to them that, like, you did this, because they'll be the first to tell you, yes, I know I did it. That was a complete mistake. That's why I appreciate Brett Beatty so much, a 23-year-old rookie taking accountability right away post-game today. It doesn't justify what he did, but it's good to hear him be accountable. And I honestly felt a little bit bad. He was so hard on himself. He said, like, basically, I'm what cost us the game. He said that game was completely on me. And that's something that he shouldn't get himself too down in the dumps, because no one wants that, right? And Beatty's the future of the third base position in Queens as of now. So I'm hoping that he doesn't take this too hard and he's able to bounce back the best he can when the Mets have their next game. But I want to go back to everything you were saying here, because what you point out was that, okay, so you're not putting really much blame at Buck because his hands were tied in that situation. I believe that there is blame to go to Buck in a certain different aspect, highlighting, as you mentioned, accountability or lack thereof. However, I think what further proved today from what we saw in this loss, and this series loss, is that this boils down to not only the lack of pitching, but it's the roster construction. This is a top-down organizational issue that we have seen since the beginning of the season. And as frustrating as it was to see us unravel and witness in live time what transpired today, which was that horrendous 8th inning, Josh Walker and Jeff Brigham shouldn't be in those spots, right? Especially bringing in Brigham with bases loaded, no out, 8th inning. I get it. You're only, it's a 2-run lead for the Mets still, but that's a high leverage situation. And to your point, that is not a situation that you should have to be banking on Brigham, who is not a bad reliever, but again, he's a solid reliever in a deep bullpen. The same way that I honestly feel to a certain extent about Drew Smith that I've highlighted many times before. Like, the same applies with him and many others in this pen. So this really becomes a roster configuration issue. And this leads, let's talk about it right now. I know we got a bunch of donations. Thank you guys so much for that. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe on. Let us know your thoughts. Again, we're sharing our raw reactions to, and I said raw. Damn it, Rec. I was so adamant about not saying raw in the show. So close.
We just for you viewers, Joe and I have been giving Wardy a little bit of a hard time lately because he tends to say raw thoughts. What are your raw thoughts? Give me your raw reaction a lot. And raw is one of those words. I'm trying to find some levity in this situation right now. That's the only thing I can find. But it happens from time to time, Wardy. When I go on a show on MLB Network, and my wife will tell me sometimes, like, hey, you're saying this lately a lot. I'll be thinking about it, and I'll say it like 5 times because I'm thinking about it. I don't want to say it, but I say it. Anyway, I'll let you get back to your raw reaction.
Okay. Not even raw reaction. Let's just get into the topic that is currently. We'll get into the donations later. I know we got a bunch, but we're going to save that all just for the Q&A part. That way we stay on topic for what we're doing here. Are the Mets dead? Because for me, as someone who hates, especially with this roster, how it is right now, all things considered, I'm usually never that fan to basically say the season is done or at this point in the year, as we're not even in July yet. But is there any reason to truly believe otherwise right now as they sit 8.5 out of the wild card? I know it's a 3 wild card spot nowadays. I know that all it takes is one big run. But from everything we're seeing, it's not just about the Mets losing, it's how they're losing, Rec. It's these mental mistakes daily. It's they just continue to find ways to lose. Like, if they were just losing a lot of really close 1-run ball games where it's like they did nothing wrong, the pitching was there too, and they were just getting bested, and you're like, okay, they're just a couple pieces away. Like, they need, say, a really strong setup man, and they need to add one more big bopper, and they know and they have the assets to do so. Like last year, for example, where if they address those things properly, you feel confident that they could really get rolling. There's just a couple things missing. Everything's been missing. You said it yourself that you can't nitpick one thing because there's so many things. Yep. So where we stand right now, do you think that this season is dead?
I don't think it's dead, but I think it's very close.
Okay.
I do. This is the first time I would say that I said it coming into the series that they had to start playing better. Winning 1 of 3 doesn't help. I think that this team still has the opportunity to turn it around. I just don't know that I see it coming. And so I'm not going to say it's dead, but they're going to have to surprise the heck out of me at this point in
Right.
order for it to turn around. And, again, as a player, I never said my season was over. I never said my season as a team was over. It just wasn't part of our vernacular. So it's hard for me to say it now, and I'm not going to. But that said, they're going to have to do some things. They're going to have to look really good the rest of the way in order to get this to turn around. And I think when we think about where they're at, we talk about roster construction and some of the issues. There's been some things that have happened over the last 2 years. Like last year, they had some guys, some holdovers, if you will, that were still on the roster that helped more than people probably thought. You come into this year and you make a couple additions, but they came with subtractions in the very same spots, right? So Nimmo comes back to center field. Same thing you had. Verlander comes into the rotation for DeGrom, basically. It's been basically the same thing. When he's been in, he's been okay. He's had a couple of good starts, a couple of bad starts. I'm not going to throw him under the bus for that. He's barely started. But it's been inconsistent. And as opposed to DeGrom, who, wasn't healthy last year. You've got Senga for Bassett, pretty much 1 for 1, right? Like Senga's been their most consistent, reliable guy, which is kind of what Bassett was last year. You saw that, and we talked about that, and a lot of people in the offseason were like, "Don't give me that. They haven't actually improved." They hadn't improved, and when you don't improve, you get worse in baseball because depth is the biggest part of this thing over 162 games, and when you allow your team to basically, I don't want to say be stripped of depth because they added a lot of pieces, but they didn't add clearly. The guys that they did add haven't had the quality of the guys that they had last year that were depth. And their young guys certainly have not stepped up the way that they needed them to. If Beatty was hitting 270 and, looking like a potential eventual all-star, didn't need to be an all-star this year, but doing some things, you'd be like, oh, great. Alvarez came in, struggled for 2 weeks, got really hot. He's been cold over the last couple of weeks. You know what I mean?
His June numbers are horrendous. I love Alvarez.
Yeah, he's nobody's performing right now. And so that's leaving it up to Lindor and Alonso again, which is exactly what this team was last year offensively. And then on the pitching staff, I already talked about it. Diaz being down, you bring in Robertson. Robertson's been fantastic. But with Diaz going down, that made it so that your bullpen was nothing. You didn't do anything in your bullpen. So it just ends up being a team that probably feels like they're stuck in the mud, probably feels like they're spinning their tires. And that's not where this Mets team was supposed to be.
I just feel like after a loss like that we saw now, demoralizing can't even truly describe it at this point, because I feel like the Mets have already had their fair share of demoralizing losses. Funny enough how it was to the Phillies this time, when last year was complete vice versa. But the Phillies still proved that they were able to get out of that rut at some point. But the Mets are a team where could they? Yes, nothing's impossible. I will never say anything's impossible at this club. That's why I titled Unofficially Dead, because if they have a rally, they're going to shock and they're going to surprise us, but we'll be happy it happened. We're not going to look at that and be like, we're not going to be down or mad about it. We still hope it happens, but our expectations are so limited at this point. My expectations are pretty much shot for the year at this rate. I'm just going with the flow and seeing what's happening, and really thinking that this Mets team, as of now, and let me know if you agree or disagree, Rec, they're pretty much in seller mode, right? We saw them trade Eduardo Escobar for 2 pitching prospects. If you'd like to share a little bit of opinion on, go ahead. If not, no worries. But that trade has happened. Eddie had a great first game, as did every Angel batter. Basically everyone but Shohei Ohtani somehow against the Rockies.
It was amazing.
That was such a crazy game.
They had 23 runs, and they made 10 outs at the time. They had made 10 outs, and they had scored 23 runs. I want to say... I was talking to my wife about it. I want to say it was they they had 23 runners on base and only made 9 or 10 outs. Yeah, it was well, yeah, obviously 23 runs scored. It was incredible. About that trade, I don't think that signaled that they're sellers. I think that signaled a strategical move to see if they could make the team better,
Right.
while allowing Escobar a chance to go play somewhere where he was going to play, because the Angels needed a third baseman. They've had injuries to Urshela. They've had injuries to Rendon.
And now they got
They've had
Moustakas
injuries
mid-game. Just like, all right, Walt's all over here.
they're just yeah, we're gonna grab
Yep.
whatever we can get. And I think actually the Mets did a fantastic job of getting two decent arms. Crow being like, he wasn't a huge prospect coming into this season, but he has really escalated up people's boards. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not like a minor league, watching every game, seeing every
He's
pitcher.
a borderline
I don't
top
know
10
enough about him.
prospect for the Mets right now.
I think he debuted at 11 for the Mets is what I saw on one of the sites.
Yeah.
Maybe it's top 10 now. Who knows? But he went from being 19 or 18, I think 18 in the Anaheim system, to being 11 in the Mets system. And they got another pitcher who was, like I said, 19 in the Anaheim system and debuted at 18, I think, for the Mets or something like that. I thought that was a great move. I really did. You're not going to play Escobar that much.
Yeah.
He's not going to give you that much. Fam's doing a great job at DH / hitting left-handed pitching. You're not going to, you want to give Beatty a leash. To me, the only thing that, and I think I mentioned this last night, the part that really blew my mind was that Danny Mendick comes up and then starts. And I don't remember how long it took Mark Vientos to start a game, but it wasn't the first game. So that was a little bit confusing. That was like the one thing that really got me from a roster perspective. I'm still upset that Vientos never got a real shot to play on this team. Hopefully they're just going to give him like another week or two to get some more at bats underneath him, so he gets more confidence again and comes back up and he plays again and gets to play this time. Because if Beatty isn't doing it for you offensively at third base, and he's not really, been shining defensively, give Vientos a shot. Let him go. I don't care. You're not going to get, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's the idea in trading Escobar, is that, okay, you have Vientos and Beatty. What do you really need Escobar for? If Vientos could come up and play that position, or Mendick, or, whatever, you've got options. Let that guy move on. Let that, get these prospects back. I can't believe they're paying all of his salary minus the, minimum wage, but that's crazy to me. But that said, I thought that was actually a really good move by the Mets. And I think that's something that could help them. Even if it doesn't help them this season, it's okay to punt on a player that you weren't going to play anyway, because
and you weren't going to bring back either, because there's a club option at the end of the season too with Eddie, I think. So
Yep. And not to mention these two pieces, who knows? Maybe they're a piece that's another Crow could be a piece that another team wants come July 31st if the Mets want to go that route, if it makes sense to go that route. So I thought it was actually a shrewd move. I really like that move.
No, I like that move a lot too, and I agree with you. Again, for all we know, they're going to keep both, and they're just going to really build that farm, because Mets pitching depth in the farm, while they have some nice talent, again, just like the rest of the farm, it's very top heavy. So it would be nice if maybe they just hold on to these guys for now and we see what happens. But no, that was really alluding to my point on the Eddie trade made sense, right? But where they currently stand right now, I don't think anyone would be shocked at all if the Mets put themselves in a position where they decide to part with Pham, Canna, Vogelbach, like all the expiring contracts. They're in a spot where they truly are not going to believe that they're going to be able to push for playoff contention unless they do such an overhaul of trades by the deadline where they're hurting their farm desperately right away, which is not what Epler nor Cohen want to do, just to potentially fall short with, rentals when there's no guarantee of them returning, for example. It would make sense to part with these guys, especially with a guy like Pham. As much as I've enjoyed Pham, we know he's not going to be here long-term or anything like that. Try to see what you get and build from there. And then bring up Vientos. Have him playing every single day. Bring up Mauricio. Give him daily reps in left field. Like, finally get rid. I know, we're praying for it.
I just want to see what he can do.
I
just want to see because I know Ellie De La Cruz is a different prospect.
Oh, my God. He's so good.
But
he's great.
Ronnie Mauricio is like mini Ellie De La Cruz for me. Ellie De La Cruz
he's
for
like
me.
a Walmart Ellie De La
polished.
Cruz right now. That's how I feel.
Yeah, Ellie De La Cruz is super polished. Like, I can't believe how good this kid looks fielding, his approach, his swing, everything. I mean, and he flies. He's got like all of it. And he looks like he's 27, not 20 or whatever. 21. I don't know. He's really young. but I just want to see him. I just want to see him play. Like I just want to see him up here, swinging the bat, getting the at bats, and getting that experience under his belt. Because I think we said this beginning of the year. We picked like our who could make the biggest impact. That was my guy. Like I think if this guy gets the opportunity, this is the one that could make the biggest impact. I just want him to get that shot so bad.
Oh my God, you and I both. I mean, hopefully it happens sooner than later. Seeming with Vientos, the only thing that sucks though is that if those things happen, it'll only likely be under the circumstances that they sell off those players. Because whether it's been a stubbornness on Buck's end or just a mutual agreement on both him and Epler, they have not shown that willingness. They've just proved it. They gave that leash to Beatty, which was nice.
Yeah,
but with Vientos, they could have managed him more poorly, in my opinion.
100%. Would selling those guys mean the end of the season for you, though? Like, if you sell the three names you said, who was it? Pham, Vogelbach, and Canna.
Right.
That doesn't spell the end of the season for me. Like, I like Canna a lot.
If they address the pitching, then I wouldn't.
Pham's been maybe their best hitter, and Vogelbach lately has been maybe like their other best hitter. I don't know. But like that doesn't signal the end of the season for me. So maybe there's a way for them to, swap pieces, whether it's big league pieces. The Rays love doing it. The Rays will go big leaguer for big leaguer if they think it marginally makes their team better. And there's other teams out there that would consider it, like the Reds, who they're not going to give up a big prospect, but maybe they'll give up a piece that, like a fringe guy who's playing pretty decent, might have a shot to, do something for the Mets, but wouldn't necessarily do a lot for them. And they could flop, I know there's not a whole lot of matches.
It's about looking at one team that has an abundance of depth.
And I think there's a way to do that for this team, even with those guys that you're talking about. So like, again, Eddie doesn't spell like, oh, they're selling. It gives them options to get guys to have ABs and then potentially, if they do want to sell eventually, like I'm not that guy who's like, oh, we're all in no matter what. Like if it's not looking like it's this year, get ready for next year. Like Mets fans, would you rather try to push all in on a team that's not going to make it, or would you rather go for it next year when, you never know how things realign? That's how I see it. And so I think there's if it ends up getting to that point, we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. Then that's okay too.
Yeah, I'm not going to get long-winded here, but final thing I'll say on this topic is, I don't know if you've seen the rumblings that has come out, of course, from everyone's favorite reporter at SNY, Andy Martino, did break a couple days ago that the Mets do have a willingness and something that they've shared this belief since Cohen first became owner, as I'm sure you're aware of, on potentially eating bad salaries in order to obtain, whether that's immediate help on the pitching side, say bullpen, or adding some, again, prospect talent like what they did in the Eduardo Escobar deal. Because the only reason why the Mets were able to get those two type of pitching prospects from the Angels was because they ate that entire $5 million of Eddie's contract. Again, Cohen is willing to, if there's one thing that Steve Cohen can do better than most owners, if not all owners in MLB, it's to utilize his dollars in a way that maybe you wouldn't initially expect. Because yes, he can eat all this money right now, and while it stings, let's not forget Robinson Cano is still on the books, McCann is still on the books, and he might be willing to eat, say, a contract of an expiring player that still has at least 2 years left on his deal, and knowing that you're going to get, say, a quality reliever with options in return. Like, that's a way that Cohen is able to really spread his wealth in a way that you don't see most owners doing. So just to briefly ask you, is that something that you think you'd be in favor of or no?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. To me, it just all comes down to this team. Like, I'm just, I don't know. I don't even know what to say about him anymore. Like, that's where I'm at.
I know.
I'm really am. Like, I'm at that point. It's like, I know that they need to be better. I know that they're not in a good position as far as roster construction. I know that they're not in a good position as far as, like, I'm certainly not like ready to not ready to push the chips all in and say, let's go for it.
Yeah.
So it's hard. Like but I don't want to, again, as a player, like it's just, I have that side of me that just can't like let go of the fact that you never know.
Right.
And so I feel like that's where I end up getting stuck, but is what it is. I don't know. There's not much else to say about this team at this point. I guess that's where I sit on it. We're gonna have to see how it plays out, especially with the Brewers coming up. It's gonna be an interesting series. Brewers haven't been playing great baseball. They're fighting for, to get back into first place in their division. And it's going to be an interesting series because that series in Milwaukee was not good. Not good for the Mets.
Don't remind me, Rick. I mean, I don't even want to be reminded of anything this season, if I'm being quite honest with you. But for the sake of quick hitters, because I know that we're running short on time, we've got roughly 800 live viewers. I mean, a lot of people in Mets land, or if you're an opposing fan, you're eating this up for breakfast. If you're a Mets fan, you want to ramble and let your thoughts. We have a lot of donations that I really want to properly address with you guys. But before I do, Rick, let's just get a simple prediction. Let's look at the line real quick for the Brewers, just for the sake of it. I had no desire on even talking about the Brewers series, but for the sake of the show, we'll still do it. Game 1, we got Ray against Verlander. Game 2, we have Peterson versus Julio Teheran, which is crazy that he's actually in a rotation right now, and he's been effective for the Brewers. And then Senga versus TBD right now for Milwaukee. Mets are home for this series.
I have TBD on one, and I have Wade Miley on another. So it'll be interesting if it's Wade Miley because he kind of dominated this team early in the year, and they've struggled against lefties.
Yep.
Well, he's a soft throwing, carve you up if you're not
like
you don't
Rich
have
Hill.
the right. Yeah. Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah,
I don't
Dick
even want to
Mellon.
go there. Yeah. Now, so prediction. Let's go. I think the Mets should absolutely win Game 1. No question. If they lose Game 1, I don't even know what to say.
You're waving the flag, throwing the damn towel. Do something.
Yeah. I don't think Tehran should. I know he's been good, but I don't think he should pose the type of problem that he's given other teams, I guess, to this point. It's only been a few outings. But Peterson struggled. I'm going to say Game 2, I'll give the edge to the Brewers. Game 3, Senga against Miley. It's in New York. I'm going to give the edge to the Mets. I think the Mets should win that game. I know Miley did well earlier this season. I know he's been on a roll, especially of late again, and I know he's a lefty, and I know the Mets have struggled at times against lefties. I'm going to say they should take Game 3. So to me, 2 out of 3, start righting the ship.
I think they're going to take 2 out of 3 too. And it's more so, and this is without me looking at the complete numbers right now, but we've seen not only this season, but in years past, Milwaukee's continued struggles on the consistency front with their offense. So I'm just hoping that comes into play more than anything, because that's the only chance in hell the Mets win this series. I think that they'll be able to put up, hopefully, the necessary runs. That isn't as much of a concern for me, knocking on wood, but it really is, again, how does this pitching staff handle? How does Justin Verlander look tomorrow? I mean, who the hell knows, right? I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he's due for a good start, right? So, he's been up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So if we're basing it on that, roller coaster, like what you'd see with a reliever, but in this case, a $43 million paid 40-year-old, hopefully they get a strong start out of him. So I'm going to go with 2-3 on that. And before we get to the comments, I do got to ask you, because I know that you don't have too much criticisms on Bucks, so I'm sure I know what your answer is going to be. However, given where this team is at now, and given where there's a lack of accountability, as you mentioned, do you think it's fair to say that Buck's time is up, or at the very least, he needs to be on the hot seat?
I'm not going to say this time is up. I will say that he probably is on the hot seat.
Right.
And I don't think it's necessarily fair. I'm not saying that he should be, but I understand how things work. So that's just a part of it. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people might remember me from SNY. Buck wasn't my first choice. I was really taken by the way he took over the team before they even started playing games last year. Nothing to do with their performance last year. I was really taken by the way he talked about handling a team, understanding a team. There was a lot there that I really liked. So I was surprised. It played out really well last year. They were awesome. So I've been even more surprised at what's gone on this year based off of that. So I'll say, I don't think he should be fired. But that said, I think it's coming It's getting close, right? Like it's getting close to that point. And by the way, this is a 4-game set with the Brewers.
Oh,
The
okay.
fourth game is Peralta against Scherzer right now.
Oh, my
So
mistake.
it's okay. Let's take Peralta has not been good at all lately. Scherzer has shown that he can come up big in spots. I'll take the Mets. I'll take the Mets 3 out of 4. Why not?
Peralta kicked the Mets' ass last time they faced, but again, that was so early in the year, and that was in Milwaukee.
And he hasn't been good lately. Like he
Yeah.
just doesn't look the same lately. I'm gonna take, and Scherzer's looked really good. This is a good. They got good matchups, I think. And the Brewers overall haven't been playing great baseball. So at home, 3 out of 4. Take 3 out of 4 Mets. If you take 3 out of 4 right now, suddenly this can potentially, like, hopefully start to turn around. Like, I'm still going to be positive because I have to be. That's
Yes.
just how I am. It could potentially turn around. I think they got to do it.
They have to. I mean, this feels like if everything hasn't felt like a make or break to this point, this I feel like will truly solidify the nail in the coffin if it isn't in already, because I know some fans feel it is. I'm gonna go and say they split.
It's getting close.
As much as I want them to win 3 out of 4, given it's a 4-game set, I have no confidence that they're gonna win the series. They got to prove it to me. So I'm gonna say they split, and they're gonna sit where they were right now. 4 days from now.
They have San Francisco coming into town after that. San Francisco's hot right now.
They are. Oh,
then
God.
They're going to
Conforto
Arizona.
Back in New York. No.
Then they're going to Arizona and San Diego right before the All-Star break. San Diego hasn't been
I'll
playing
be
well.
there
We all know
in
that.
San Diego for that series. It's going to be the battle in mid.
Yeah.
So,
but Arizona, like they've been great. They need to take 3 out of 4 here if they want to go into the All-Star break with any momentum. So it'll be interesting.
Just everything about every matchup is to me. But all right, let's get into the live chat now, and then we'll get out of here again. Appreciate everyone watching. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe on. We have over 700 viewers in the live chat on YouTube, so make sure you're hitting those buttons. Make sure you follow again if you enjoy consistent Mets content like this, weekly podcasts covering the Metropolitans through their highs and certainly their lows. Then this is a place to be for the Queen's Corner Pod, and same applies if you're watching the 7 Line socials, that being their Twitter and their Facebook. Again, we appreciate you all greatly. Let's get into the donations. There's a lot, and thank you guys so much for them for your generosity. Yoshima with the $5 hollow says, I don't normally get angry over the Mets, but I pretty much had at this point. And that's a lot to say from him because Yoshima has been that internal optimist. I know him very well. Pet Mets with the $20 donation. Thank you so much. He says, I don't believe Buck went from great last year to not knowing what he is doing this year. I'm wondering if the reason the Mets were not rushing to bring up the young guys was to have them work on fielding at AAA, not minor league level. Well, that's certainly true. I mean, that's exactly.
That was a big part of it. That's what they were saying.
Yes. And I believe that too. That went in hand even with Beatty to a degree, even though it didn't last long because he balled out right away and Eddie did the opposite. But Vientos, they still want to give defensive reps. I honestly feel that's more for trade value reasons because we're not platooning Vientos and Beatty consistently at third base for the foreseeable future. I mean, you shouldn't. I think that's a really stupid mindset to have if the Mets would have that personally. But I think for trade value reasons, that makes sense. And Ronnie, giving him this versatility now is key. They're finally giving him reps in left field. That is huge because that's a guy that, should he have a future on this club, it'll likely be there and maybe kind of doing him and McNeil flipping and flopping, whenever it's deemed best, stuff like that, which could be beneficial for sure. But I appreciate that donation. Country King, thank you so much for a $5 donation. He says, the Mets played with the same passion that you have for the team as a fan, Wardy. They would have won every game. It's a shame. Well, I appreciate the compliment. And honestly, you'd probably be right because I live and die by this team a little too much, especially when things are going as bad as what they've been. But again, that's why I appreciate all my fellow Mets fans out there that, again, it's hard not to be emotional when, again, you look forward to most on the daily. Say you're doing your normal 9 to 5. You can't wait to watch the Mets at 7, right? It's such a part of everyone's livelihood as is. So naturally, I can understand if emotions are high with the way that they're performing as of late, or quite literally the majority of the season for that matter. But Dave, thank you so much for your $10 donation. He says, I've never felt this bad about being a Mets fan ever. Mets fan since 67, and I've never felt this low. Losing in playoffs happens, but this is unacceptable. I agree with you. It is nothing short of unacceptable, Dave, and Dave is an absolute beauty. Good friend of mine, great supporter here too, always beyond generous. No, I agree wholeheartedly on that front, Dave. It has been nothing short of unacceptable. Well, let's see. This thing just glitched on me. I want to make sure I don't miss that donation. Hold on. Pet Mets, thank you for the donation. I just missed one. No way. It just glitched on me. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it. Someone gave a $35 donation and it glitched on me. Son of a gun. It's so annoying in YouTube and in my software. It doesn't let you go all the way up. It caps. So I'm going to try, but I don't know if I'll be able to get to that comment. If I missed anyone's donations, I certainly apologize. You can just reiterate them in the chat before we leave if that was the case. I'm pretty sure I know who donated the $35 earlier too. So if you comment again, I will certainly answer. For whatever reason, my chat just glitched and I can't seem to find it. So I apologize on that. Pat Metz with the $10 donation. Again, though, he says 73 Mets, August 30th. 1973, 9 games under 500, 6.5 games back in last place. It will be tough, but I can see this team turn it around. The starting staff can to turn it around. So I like the optimism there. He's pulling out some Mets history all the way from 1973. Things have been worse, and they were able to pull it out and ultimately have a run there. So Pat Mets, I appreciate that donation as well. And again, I apologize to anyone's donations that I may have missed because my damn thing decided to glitch on me. But before we get out of here in the next minute or two, any closing remarks, Rec? Anything else you guys say? Or are you just like, you know what? I'm shot. I'm fed up. I just, I want to go and enjoy my night.
There's not much else to say. This team's got to turn it around. They need to do it now, and the players need to do it. That's it, period. Accountability, come out, be better. We kind of said this before the Philly series. Nothing happened. Focus, man. Little mistakes can't happen. Got to come in, play the game the right way. And that's I'm not saying that they're not trying to. At some point, that doesn't matter, right? Like that's how it is. I know that just as well as we all do. You just got to, you have to go out there and play better, period.
No, I agree with you 100%. Hopefully we get it. James says $15 donation. It's now or never. I didn't see the donate. I apologize. Like I said, this thing's annoying. On YouTube, it'll be nice if you could go all the way up, but after a certain period of time, it refreshes and you can't.
I think the only thing I saw James say was that Beatty is the Mets. Wrecker, get it in your head. Beatty is the Mets. I don't know what that means.
Okay. Fair enough.
Here, I can go up. I'll see what else is up here.
See. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to find anything though.
James also said, Tyler, you agree with me. Beatty is growing pains. Wrecker is going pains. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
Let's see. I don't see any other donations. I think you're good.
Okay. All right.
At least where I'm at. I think we have so many comments that we missed that it probably just, that's all. Thank you guys.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Beyond generous. And I appreciate it. Next time we'll try to get to some comments sooner to make sure we don't miss any. Last year when I did the trade deadline stream, I literally had, I had 2,000 concurrent viewers, and I might be even similar this year, regardless on the fate of the team. And when that happens, it is going so fast that I just have to just kind of randomly pick a comment and be like, all right, I'm going to answer yours. I'm going to answer yours because it's impossible to get at everyone's. I mean, we topped out around
anything is possible.
Yoshima, thank you for the donation. You beauties have a great night. Thank you, man. Anything is possible.